Raider Campus, how we doing tonight? Good to see everybody here. My name's Clayton Walker. I'm one of the pastors at Experience Life, and pumped to be here, pumped to be back here tonight. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever promised something that you weren't too sure you could deliver on? Let me see a show of hands. Like you promised something and you were like, after you made that promise, like, I have no idea why I just said that. Okay, I'm guessing that most of you raising your hands right now asked your parents for money and promised you would pay them back, okay? You say, I just need the money for this, for the books, or for school, or for gas, or for food, or whatever, and I promise I will pay you back. And as soon as you said it, you were like, I'm not paying them back. There's no way. There is no way I'm paying them back. My brother-in-law, his name is Tanner, and a year or two ago, he asks me and my brother, Travis, to run a marathon with him. And he's like challenging us, you know, and he's trying to lay down the gauntlet and all this kind of stuff, and texting my brother and I. The answer was easy for me, okay? I didn't even have to think twice about whether or not I was gonna do this. It was no way, okay? I'm not gonna run a marathon, are you crazy? Like, I have no desire to go run 26.2 miles or whatever it is. The furthest I've ever run in my life is 4 miles, and I did that once, and that nearly killed me, okay? So I have no desire to go run a marathon, okay? But my stupid brother, Travis, is like, sure, man, I'm down. How hard could it be, all right? And so he decides he's gonna run this marathon with my brother-in-law in Austin. And I'm like, good luck, man. And so he gets one of those, couch to marathon, apps or something like that trains you to get off the couch. Somehow it gets you off your couch and gets you to train for this marathon. And so he's training for the marathon. But the problem is he doesn't really train enough. He doesn't prepare enough for this marathon. And so he goes to Austin and he starts running in this marathon, and it's killing him. He said it was the most difficult thing he ever did in his life. He barely finished. He's like crawling across the finish line, okay? But the worst part about this marathon for my brother was he didn't know the right clothes to wear, okay? Now, I didn't know this either. But when you run I know it now, okay? But when you run in a marathon, like, you need appropriate clothing. And here's why. His nipples were getting so raw from his shirt, they started bleeding. And so my brother had to finish this marathon like with both of his nipples bleeding through his shirt. And I was like, bro, why did you say that you would do the marathon? He's like, yeah, as soon as I said I would do it, I thought, this is gonna end badly. I was like, why did you do that? You see, a lot of times we make promises that we can't keep because we don't understand the depth of them. We don't understand the preparation that it takes to come through on the promise. Every weekend in this city, there is an event that many people go to. It costs a lot of money, and it takes months of preparation. And lots of people get dressed up, and they go to this event every weekend in this city, in most cities. It's an event that my wife and her mom nearly killed each other over, okay? And if you haven't guessed what it is, it's called a wedding, all right? Now, here's the weird thing about weddings. They take months of misery in preparation for a 30-minute ceremony. I don't know about you, it just doesn't make sense to me, okay? So months of misery and preparation to plan for this wedding ceremony. And then what happens is a guy like me, a pastor's up there and has these two people together and watches them and leads them in making all these promises to each other that they don't really understand the depth of. And that quite possibly they haven't prepared to be able to make to each other. You see, there's a huge problem when when a couple is standing face to face and they're promising each other some things. And the huge problem with that is that most likely they've bought into a myth. And I'm wondering if some of you maybe have bought into that myth as well. Here's the myth. The myth is that promises are a substitute for preparation. That's a myth. You know that, right? That promises are a substitute for preparation. And many people have bought that lie, have bought that myth. Like, if I promise some things on my wedding day, then I'll be able to keep them because I promised I would. If I made the promise on my wedding, I'll be able to keep it. But here's some promises. Promises like, I'll be faithful. I'll never leave. I promise I'll ditch the bad habits. I promise my recent past won't show up in our future marriage. I promise I'll get more involved in church. And you see, here's the problem. The problem is that in relationships, people think they can promise their way past a lack of preparation. That's the problem. When you begin to think that you can promise your way past a lack of preparation, you see, here's what you got to understand. Just because you say I do doesn't mean that you're capable to do it. Doesn't mean you've been enabled to do it. It just means you're accountable now. And when you're accountable for something that you're not prepared to fulfill, when you're accountable for something that you haven't been enabled to do, it just causes misery. Kind of like my brother with his bleeding nipples, okay? He was miserable. Well, you know, King Solomon, the wisest man, one of the wisest men to ever live, said this in Proverbs chapter 14. If you have a Bible, you can follow along. Here's what King Solomon had to say. Check this out. He said, only simpletons, which is basically just another word for fool, moron, okay? He says, only simpletons believe everything they're told. But isn't that what you do when you're in love? Like, you believe everything that they tell you. Oh, he'll change. He told me he's going to change. He told me he's going to get a job. He's going to get out of debt. He's going to quit drinking. He's going to stop that addiction. He told me that. I believe him. Because you're in love. But most of you know, just like I do, I mean, all being in love does is turn you into a moron, right? I mean, you start to believe everything that the person says. But check out what Solomon says. He said, only simpletons, only fools, only morons believe everything they're told. Only morons believe empty promises. And then he goes on to say this, but the prudent, it's just another word that means the wise. The prudent carefully consider their steps. And the same thing is true in marriage. The prudent, the wise, carefully consider their, what's this word? Steps toward marriage. Because here's what the wise understand. Check this out. They understand you have to prepare before you make a promise. They understand that what happens today impacts tomorrow. They understand that the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And you see, here's the cool thing about being single right now, is that you've got time. You've got time to still prepare for that day when you stand across from your husband or wife. You've got time to prepare. In other words, you've got time to take some steps, to carefully consider and take your steps towards marriage. You've got time. And so I'm going to give you some steps, a way to prepare for that day, so that when you are standing across from that person, you're able to say, I do. And maybe because you've prepared yourself, you're enabled to actually follow through on those commitments. So if you've got a pen, a phone, whatever, I challenge you, get them out, follow along, write some of these things down. And here's what's so great about steps. You can see where a person's been, and you can see where a person is going. And here's the other thing, one more thing before we get to the steps. Just note this, write this down. These are some steps that you, not just you should be taking, but the person you're looking for should be taking. And if they're not, chances are, might not be the one. So here's some steps. Number one, you need to prepare emotionally. You need to prepare emotionally. And here's what I mean by that. You need to address the past. Like, if you've got any unresolved childhood issues, you need to deal with some of those so that you can be prepared emotionally for a marriage relationship. Let me tell you more about what I'm talking about. Like, if you've still got issues with your dad because of the way he treated you when you were younger, because of an addiction he had, because he left you and your mom and your siblings. If you've still got issues with a mom who pressured you and didn't nurture you enough and was addicted to X or whatever it might be, if you've still got issues from your childhood with your mom, you need to take care of these things. You need to address these things so that you can be prepared emotionally for a marriage relationship. Dr. Les and Leslie Parrott, they're clinical psychologists, and they also wrote a book called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. Here's what they had to say about this. If you attempt to build intimacy with a person before you've done the hard work of becoming a whole and healthy person, every relationship will be an attempt to complete the hole in your heart. In other words, what they're saying is you need to prepare emotionally. You need to address any childhood issues that you have not addressed it. Because here's the thing. Any problem that you've got with mom and dad or anybody that hurts you in your childhood is going to come out in your marriage. You're going to be upset with your spouse. And they're going to be wondering, what in the world is going on? And you're finally going to begin to realize it's not your spouse that you're mad at. It's your mom, it's your dad, it's the person that hurt you when you were younger, and the anger and the emotions are being directed at your spouse because they weren't taken care of. You didn't prepare yourself emotionally. And so if you find yourself thinking, man, I may have some unresolved childhood issues, I want to challenge you to do two things, and you need to write this down. Number one, I want you to get a book. It's called Steps to Freedom in Christ by Neil Anderson. Steps to Freedom in Christ by Neil Anderson. And then here's the second thing. You need to see a counselor. You need to talk with a counselor or a professional, someone that can help you deal with those unresolved childhood issues, who can help you figure out how to become healthy and whole, how to prepare emotionally. So that's the first thing. The second thing you need to prepare is you need to prepare behaviorally. Prepare behaviorally. You see, when you get married, your problems don't just go away. Like a lot of people think, well, when we get married, surely they'll be different. He'll change. She will change. When we get married, he'll stop doing that, or she'll stop doing that, or it won't be like that anymore when we get married. Well, then you get married, and then it turns into, well, maybe when we have kids, he'll stop doing that. She'll stop doing that. He won't be like that anymore when we have kids. Surely that'll be the case. Okay, then you have kids. Now it's, well, maybe when they get into school, he won't be like that anymore. You keep pushing it over further and further and further down the timeline, and they never get any better. Because see, here's the thing. When you get married, the great things get better, but the bad things get worse. It gets worse. And so if you've got an addiction now, when you get married, it'll likely be worse. If you drink a lot now, chances are when you get married, you'll likely drink a whole lot more. If you've got a porn struggle now, chances are when you get married, it'll get worse. If you've got a spending problem now, chances are when you get married, it'll likely be worse. If you play too many video games right now, chances are when you get married, it'll probably be worse. Because when you get married, your issues, the things that you struggle with don't just go away because you're married. They don't go away because you said I do. No, they very likely they get worse. And think about it. I mean, don't you want the person that you're going to marry dealing with their issues now? I mean, do you really want them to drag that baggage, that addiction, that problem into their marriage with you? I highly doubt it. And so if you don't want your spouse to do that, then you need to be working on your own issues, your own behavior. You need to prepare behaviorally. And let me tell you something scary. Whatever their issue is, usually 6 months into marriage, it'll become your fault. And you might think, well, how could they spin a gambling problem or a video game problem? How could they spin that around and make it my fault? Trust me, when you get married, you get all kinds of creative, okay? You need to prepare yourself behaviorally. Third, you need to prepare physically. Now, I'm not talking about like working out and running marathons and all that kind of stuff, okay? Here's what I mean by this, okay? You need to postpone the physical component of the relationship ALAP, okay? Now, in case you're wondering what that means, that's as long as possible, okay? Now, I know some of you are like, but listen, Clayton, you don't understand. Like, I'm wanting to have sex ASAP, okay? Like, as soon as possible, okay? You need to listen to last week's message, all right? Okay? So go online on our website, Bring in Sexy Back #3, listen to last week's message, okay? But no, when you're in a relationship, you need to set some standards. You need to be prepared physically, and you need to postpone the physical component of the relationship as long as possible. And here's the other thing. I'm not just talking about sex. Some of you were here last week and you heard me talk about how I wish on my wedding day when my wife, Darby, was coming down the aisle, I wished I'd never even touched another girl. Like that was the thought that went through my head. And I was talking about how I'm sure some of you think I'm crazy, to which I responded, I am crazy, but I also feel sorry for you if you think that's crazy. I feel sorry for you. Because it's sad. Because if this isn't the mindset that you take and that you have in your dating and engaged relationships, it just causes problems and pain and damage down the road. You need to postpone the physical part of your relationship as long as possible. Listen, no one goes into a relationship and after they've been in that relationship for a while thinks that, man, we would have been so much healthier. We would have been so much better off in our relationship if we had gotten physical faster. Nobody ever thinks that. In fact, most people, they think the opposite. Man, I wish we would have waited longer. I wish we would have waited till X. I wish we would have waited until we got married. And if that person, especially if that person doesn't end up being the person you get married to, you're going to wish you had waited a whole lot longer. I know this is one of those areas, it's hard, and a lot of us have messed up in it. And I told you last week how bad I've messed up in this. But girls, I'm just telling you, if you've got a guy and after the second date, he's not okay with you not wanting to make out and fool around and do all that stuff, tell that loser to hit the road and go ruin somebody else's life, okay? Guys, if you've got a girl that is constantly like, come on, come on, come on, you need to know you're not the first. You're probably not the second. You're probably not the third. And here's what you've got to understand, guys. Men, women, check this out, who are the most sexually active before marriage, studies show, this is what research shows, they are far more likely to have an affair after marriage. That's what research shows. For couples and for guys and girls who are sexually active before they get married. It's just true. And so I want to challenge you to be prepared physically. And one more thing about this. Whatever you do, don't move in together. Don't live together before you get married. I know that's becoming popular and a lot of people are doing that. But the research on that, on cohabitation before you get married is awful. The research, all it points to is abuse, single moms, and kids with no dads. That's where that will get you. It doesn't end in happily ever after. So don't move into it with each other. So third, you prepare physically. Fourth, you need to prepare financially. You need to prepare financially. You need to get a job, get on a budget, and get out of debt. Listen, I heard a pastor the other day say this. He said, I don't recommend couples get married until they're both out of debt. I was like, whoa, dang, that's strong. But I mean, think about it. What's the number one cause of divorce? Money problems. And what causes money problems? Debt. And so why would you want to bring a sure problem into your marriage? You need to be prepared financially. You need to have a job. You need to be on a budget. And you need to be getting out of debt as soon as possible so that you don't struggle with those money problems, with those money issues. And plus, you can get out of debt a lot quicker as a single than you can as a married person. A lot quicker. And here's what I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet if you've got a boyfriend or girlfriend and you've got some debt, that if you guys commit to get out of debt before you get married, I bet you get out of debt real quick, okay? And listen, girls, if you tell that guy, hey, listen, if you want to get married, if you want to get engaged, whatever, that's fine, but you need to get out of debt first. I need to get out of debt first. Listen, I bet he will move back in with his parents so he can save money and get out of debt if he really loves you, okay? You need to be prepared financially. When Darby and I got engaged, she had $800 in credit card debt. And that's pretty minimal for today's standards. But when we were getting engaged, her dad found out about her credit card. And it wasn't a good thing. And he told her, he said, listen, Darby, if you don't get out of debt before you get married, I'm not going to walk you down the aisle. I was like, Darby, babe, you got to fix that, okay? We got to do something about that, all right? So she moved home, and she paid off that credit card in 1 month. And I was like, thank you, sir. Appreciate that, Dad. Thank you. You got to prepare financially. Fifth, last, you need to prepare spiritually. Prepare spiritually, and this is the most important. You need to be involved in a church. Check this out. If you go to the right places, chances are you'll meet the right people. If you go to the right places, chances are you'll meet the right people. And you know what? Raider Camps is a great place for that. This is a great place to get involved. You start volunteering, you get involved in a group, you meet other people, you meet other Christians, you meet people who are on the same page with you, that are heading the same direction as you. It's a great place to get involved. I would challenge you to volunteer. Guys, man, I mean, when we did a survey here one time, I think the numbers were like 65% or so, 65 to 70% of the people that come to the Raider Campus are girls. Listen, guys, go greet at the front door, man. You can take numbers as they walk in, okay? Get involved, volunteer, get involved in a group. I can't tell you how many people have gotten married, have met their spouse by being a part of one of our groups, one of our small groups, our life transformation groups. It happens all the time. So you need to get involved in a group. You need to get involved in the Raider Campus. I told you last week, Darby and I started talking again after some problems that we had. We started talking again because we ran into each other at a college gathering just like this. And we were talking after the gathering. I was there with some friends, and they're like, hey man, because we were still talking. They're like, hey man, can we get your keys? Can we go wait in your truck? And I was like, yeah, fine. So I gave them my keys. 5 minutes later, I get a phone call. It's my friends, and they're all laughing. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? You know, they're like, hey, tell her to take you home. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, we took your truck, and they're laughing, and then they hung up. It's like, hung up the phone. Darby, can you take me home? She took me home. We started talking. Hey, it worked. So, lesson is, if you've got a friend here and you're trying to hook them up, just go steal their car later, okay? It'll work out great, I promise. You know, I just met with a friend of mine from high school in the last couple of weeks, and he told me he was getting a divorce. Or actually, it was final that day. And I was like, man, I'm so sorry. I said, what happened? He said, you know, for the last 6 years that they were married, he said, we didn't go to church once. I said, why not? He said, you know, it never has been a big priority for me. It's kind of one of those things they thought it would change when they got married. But he said, you know, the reason why he got divorced, he said, I know it's because Jesus was not at the center of our relationship. I said, I don't want that to be you. You need to be prepared spiritually now. You need to be involved in church now. You need to get plugged in. You need to get to know other people. If you're in the right places, chances are you're going to meet the right people. And guys, I want to talk to you for just a second, okay? Just have kind of a minute of bro time, okay? When Darby and I were engaged, kind of towards the end of my time in college, I was working 3 jobs, okay? I was working 3 jobs because I didn't want to have any debt from school or anything like that. And so I was paying for part of my school. I had a little bit of a college fund from my parents, not much. And I got a grant here or there, but I was working a lot so that I could pay to be in school. And 2 of those jobs were really enabling me to do the 3rd job, which was ministry. I was involved I was on staff with a youth ministry at a church and wasn't really getting paid much. And so I worked the other 2 jobs to really support my ministry job that I loved. Well, when Darby and I were engaged and kind of during that time, one of the things that Darby told me, or two of the many things that Darby said she was attracted to me for, and I say 2 of the many, like emphasis on the many reasons she was attracted to me. But 2 of those reasons she said were this: she knew I loved Jesus, and she said she knew that I had this inner drive in me to work hard. And guys, here's what I want you to know. Girls at this age, if they're godly, if they're following Jesus, are starting to look for something different. They're not impressed with the guy who gets drunk every week and who is incredible at Call of Duty. I hate to burst your bubble, but that's just not who they're looking for, okay? I would take that seriously right there. They're looking for a guy who's responsible, that they can trust, that they believe is going to work hard, that they believe is driven, that they believe is going to put Jesus first. It's the kind of guy they're looking for. And so that's what I want to challenge you to be. To not just think about finding the one, but prepare to become the one. Prepare to become. And you know, you've still got time. And that's what I want to challenge you to do. Quit thinking about, like Chris talked about a few weeks ago, being so focused on finding the one. Prepare to become, so that one day when you're standing at that altar about to say, I do, you can follow through on that commitment. And so we're wrapping up this series tonight. We're finishing up, and I just want to make a challenge to you based upon everything we've discussed in this series. If you're here and you say, you know what, that's me. I want to prepare to become the one. That's me. Everything that we've been talking about, I want to live that out. It doesn't matter what's been going on in my past. My past doesn't have to be, I don't have to continue my past into my future or whatever it is that we said a few weeks ago. That's not going to be me anymore. I want to prepare to become the one. If that's you, I just want you to stand up right where you're at. I want to pray for you. Thank you. We're going to sing here in just a second. before we do, I want to pray for you. God, I pray for all these guys and girls that are standing right now. They're saying they want to prepare to become. And I pray that would be true for them. God, that right now through the Holy Spirit's power in them, you would ignite a fire and passion within them to become the one. To prepare, to take these steps, just like Solomon talked about in Proverbs 14. They would be prudent, they would be wise, and they would carefully consider their steps towards marriage. They wouldn't be fools. But they would prepare, they would take each step so that they could be prepared one day to stand across from their spouse and say, I do, and mean it, and be able to live it out and to be able to fulfill it. God, I pray that in the power of the name of Jesus over every one of these guys and girls. It's in your name.
Thanks for checking out one of our messages today. For more information about our church or to watch other messages, you can go to our website at experiencelife.now.com. Let us know if we can serve you in any way, and we hope to see you real soon.